Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Chris McDaniel's America here on the Midnight Ride Network. Of course, once again, I'm not Chris. We're hoping next week things will smooth down. Chris, of course, was traveling for work, was due back, I believe, today, but too late to do the show. And we're about to have a massive winter event in our area, and that made us think that trying to delay it to Sunday probably wasn't a good idea. But I'm not alone. I, of course, am Jack Fairchild, Chris's regular co-host. I'm joined alongside, once again, my good friend and co-worker, Kevin Lindsay. Kevin, welcome back to Chris McDaniel's America.
2 weeks in a row.
I know.
Making it a habit, man.
I know. I mean, you know, if you get up to 3 in a row, you'll be in Jim Segelski level. So
they call it a winning streak in baseball.
Yeah.
Remember that?
Yeah. Once you get to 3, that's called a winning streak.
That's right.
But yeah, we've got a lot of stuff we want to get into today. But first, Kevin, have you already stocked up on water and bread for the Ice-ageddon?
You know, I haven't went to the grocery store yet. I refuse to go into the madness. I may regret it by Sunday, but I refuse to go into the madness of panic.
I'm just curious what the shelves look like. You know, as a photographer and a reporter, you may want to go snap some shelf pictures.
Yeah, that might actually be good art for the paper section.
Well, guys, we've got a lot of stuff we want to get into today, but I was getting ready for the show, and I came across this troubling story that I found on Fox News' website, and it's talking about assassination culture. And assassination culture is not necessarily assassination per se, but it's kind of a public tolerance of politically motivated violence. And apparently this poll says that it is increasing in its acceptance in the United States. And apparently this survey also says that it's especially growing amongst women. Researchers also said that they found that high usage of social media and growing pessimism about the country's future may be eroding basic civility. We'll have thoughts on that for sure here in a second. Apparently, this organization that is doing this poll is the National Cognitive Research Institute, or the NCRI. They have been studying emerging threats to national security, civics, and the American youth online. It's crazy when you see this. And the director of that organization, Joel Finkelstein, he said, "I thought we'd be seeing a bunch of guys who were unemployed who'd be endorsing this." But apparently that's not the case. It's not just the bitter unemployed. The NCRI has been studying the topic of assassination culture since before the assassination of Turning Point founder Charlie Kirk. Now, we know for a fact that this, we saw firsthand, Kevin, after the assassination of Charlie Kirk, just how deranged people can be when it comes to an assassination like that. When we see somebody murdered in broad daylight. And we saw several examples of sickening post comments. And it was one of those things that I think, even though we knew that was out there in the world, it still shocked us to a degree when we saw that. They started this study, though, Kevin, even before that happened.
Yeah, I think that it's very concerning. I think that you're seeing this trend of growing individuals who take this stuff very lightly. And as a parent, that's concerning me because I've always been told, and whenever I was younger, I kind of just said, whatever, it's just older people talking. But, there's this line or this quote that's what one generation hates, another tolerates, then that generation tolerates, and the next generation accepts. And that is, even before Charlie Kirk's assassination, you have people starting to make light of things like that, and of people being shot and things like that. I think it started with the I think of the insurance director, maybe I'm saying that wrong.
The CEO of the insurance company,
right? Where
United Health, I think it was.
Yeah, he was shot in a city street, and people made light of it, I feel like. And then you have obviously Charlie Kirk and the attempted assassination on Donald Trump. And people just kind of make light and are quick to joke. I remember, it's not an assassination, but I was 11 years old whenever September 11th happened, and how it was just widely, no one joked about it. No one made memes about it, nothing like that. It was a tragedy. And then you take to where we are now, and people are quick to make memes and things like that, and just make so light of things like that. I think it is super, super concerning, and where we are as a nation.
I'll even go back a little bit further than you are. We were talking about this earlier today downstairs in the office. I remember being a young child when Ronald Reagan there was an assassination attempt on Reagan's life. Dude walked up and shot him and shot a couple of other people. And I remember, again, I was a kid, real young. But I also remember the sense that nobody was making fun of Reagan for getting shot. Folks were concerned. I remember as a young child, because that was the president. I don't know that I fully understood at that age what the president meant, but I knew that was somebody that was represented our leader of some site. And I remember this fear that something worse was going to happen, because he was pretty much shot broad daylight. And again, fortunately, Reagan was able to survive. It just, it's one of those things where you see the differences. I'm sure there were idiots out there that weren't magnified because we didn't have social media back then, that made off the color comments that they were happy he was shot. But with social media, all of this content is magnified to the 10th degree. And it's insane to sit back and watch some of this stuff unfold. Apparently, again, we're looking at this story and we're seeing what's happening. And what you're seeing, again, is a direct connection to this acceptance of assassination culture, as they're calling it, and social media. I mean, social media has made us desensitized big time. According to the report, they say that the people are spending a lot of time on social media. They believe the United States is an empire in decline, and they are more likely to be female, which is fascinating, because you're always told females are motherly. They're more compassionate, but that doesn't seem to be the case in this instance. The quote that Finkelstein said is, "We see these lewd images of Luigi Mangini," the assassin,
right,
the alleged assassin of the United Healthcare CEO, Brian Thompson. So he says, "We've seen these images of Mangini that have been packaged into some kind of sexual symbol." And I think we may be seeing some downstream effects of that on people who use social media a lot, on females. It's one of those crazy things. And then he later compared it to how certain generations made Che Guevara this hero that he really isn't. That's a topic for another day. But I mean, it's just, it's crazy as you go into this and you see that this happened, because again, the whole assassination of Brian Thompson is kind of not been talked about as much after the Charlie Kirk assassination, but that happened early morning, sun's out. Guy that had waited just walked up and randomly shot him. I don't care what you think of healthcare companies. I mean, I have less than favorable opinions of healthcare, of these health insurance providers. But this man was a man with a family, and you just gun him down in cold blood. That's not acceptable. And we can't be a civilized society if we're saying that this is going to be more success. I mean, this is going to be acceptable. The study found support for violence was higher among women. The suspect in each of those cases make in general, violence is down, especially murders. Finkelstein said. He said they're down, but what's really interesting is political violence is up. When you look at the researchers by the money, they had 1,000 respondents nationwide on a scale of 0 to 6 about two high-profile political figures, Trump and the New York City Mayor, Zohan Mandini. The study looked at the tolerance for violence, not to commit violence per se, and apparently it was they asked questions about the justification for political violence. A score of 0 meant that the participant considered political violence completely unjustified. Anything higher than 0 meant the respondent believed there was at least some justification. A score of 6, obviously, meant the respondents thought that political violence was completely justified. According to the NCRI, 67% of left-center respondents saw murder as justified. 67, Kevin. Mm-hmm. And then that's compared to 54% on the right that felt it was justified. Again, I don't know who these 54 right-wingers are, but you're not in my camp because I'm not a fan of political violence. A year ago, left of center support was at 56%. So this is a massive jump. Women were found in this poll to be overall 15% more likely to support assassination culture. 14.8% for Trump, 21.2% for Mandini. It's crazy when you look at this and you see that the culture is on the rise of both sides of the political spectrum, which is frightening, to say the least. And across both generals, the study found that it is specifically pronounced on the left and among women of any ideology, which begs, what's going on with women? Where they're in both right or left, they seem to be the ones, at least according to this poll, that are more accepting of it.
Well, I want to put myself or anyone in trouble here, and I definitely don't want to put the blame game. I think as a whole, I'll look at this as a whole. Trump derangement syndrome is real.
That is accurate.
It is very, very much a real thing. You can obviously see that it's gone up in a year. You can see in trends, if you are on social media, the people who just want him gone. There's been T-shirts made about hoping for his obituary and all of this stuff. I mean, it is absolutely insane. I think the reason you've seen it rise in right-wing and in Republican camps, I feel like, and we talked about this off there, I feel like they're almost in a defense mode in some ways. Not saying that that's justified by any means. I'm not saying that. I've told you, I said last week with the killing of the Minneapolis woman.
Nicole Good.
Nicole
Renee Good.
She's an image bearer, and that goes for what we're talking about here. Being an image bearer, we should value all life. Mm-hmm. But I do think we see this whole political climate, and it's just terrible. I talked about it last week, how you had J.D. Vance and Tim Walz was a normal debate, unlike what we've seen in probably the past 10 years. The political climate is just out of control, and it goes back to the Trump derangement syndrome that we've seen here. I'm just shocked that 67%, nearly 70% of a people believes that it's okay. Whereas, you have Republicans who it's rising too, as far as women and things like that. I don't know. I don't know if it's a direct line with feminism and this toxic feminism that we've seen come about.
Wait. Toxic. All we ever hear is toxic masculinity.
Yeah.
We don't hear about toxic feminism. Yeah. So please expand on that.
Well, there's I would say an old school feminism, right? Mm-hmm. Where you want independence and things like that. And I get that. I 100% see it. But now like I said, it's basically toxicity that is coming in. And we talk about toxic masculinity all the time. There's
which is overstated, by the way.
Right.
I mean, because they've gotten to the point now where acting like a man, like what is expected of a man to act, that's toxic.
Right. Yeah. Can't act like a man anymore. I mean, it's just, that's taboo.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think there is some toxicity. I won't sit here and lie.
Oh, I'm not saying there's not, but it's overplayed.
You're right. But I do think there is this other side of toxic feminism that we're seeing. And I think that in a lot of cases, you can see studies. I think God-given, men are less emotional normally than what women are, where women are more emotional as caregivers and things like that. I mean, I've got a daughter, and I can tell you that sometimes she can be more emotional than I can, and I think that's just our DNA and how we're set up in the gene pool. But I think that culture, social media, has really, really, really had a negative impact on us as a society. And, I do things like now where we limit her screen time and things like that. And
that's wise.
I try to limit my own, because once you start taking in so much social media and so many opinions and a lot of extreme opinions, it's going to have an effect on you. And I think that it's been toxic, and it may be a deal where it's more toxic for a woman than it is a man. I'm not sure, but it's alarming either way. 67% are justifying political violence on the left. 54% are justifying political violence on the right. Whatever you want to say, whether it's defensive or not, it's still is unjustified in my opinion. Yeah. We've got to do better. And it goes back to what I said last week. We are a nation that reacts instead of waiting. Yeah. And I think that's what it comes back to.
It's absolutely too high on both sides. I mean, the left clearly has a bigger issue, but both sides are increasing, and both are over 50%. And that is way, way too high, way unacceptable. The person in charge, the Finkelstein, he warned that culturally, young people may be spending too much time, as Kevin was talking about, on social media, leading to dangerous results. And again, he said that taken together, I think the findings suggest that this is a moral, this is a spiritual crisis. It's not a partisan one. And we need to treat it that way. That means we need people coming together to talk about the issues that are showing up in our national family. And I think he's dead on too. Yes, social media is a major part of the problem, but the breakdown in the family and the lack of religion that we see nowadays. I mean, look, I'm not saying you have to go to church every weekend. I'm just saying that you probably need to find time to study the Bible and to understand spiritual teachings, because I do think that's part of the decline we have, Kevin, is that as a nation, we have pulled back away from our Christian roots, away from our Christian faith. Now, I know there are liberals out there that are mad and screaming at their TV, at their phone, whatever they're watching this on. They're screaming at it going, we're not a Christian nation. Yes, we are. You go back and you look at what the founders said, the way they wrote it. We are, in fact, a Christian nation. Now, are we getting away from that? Absolutely. There's study after study out there that proves the decline in church membership, that proves that there's a decline in people that believe in Christianity. That's not a good thing. But it started at home when the families started to erode. That's when you started to see. I mean, Kevin, you're taking a proactive stance by limiting your daughter's time on social media. There are way more parents than you that are seeing this as a crutch that they can hand to their kid. It's an extra babysitter. I don't want to deal with my kid. So here, take my phone, go play with it. And I get it. It's easy. It's a simple fix. But you need to know what they're doing with that phone. You need to make sure they're not on there. And once they get older in teenage age, you need to be monitoring how often are they on social media? What websites are they frequenting? I mean, just recently, Kevin, I think it was last week, might have been the week before, there was a kid that burned down a piece of a synagogue in Jackson, and filled with anti-Semitic beliefs is what they're reporting. So allegedly he was very anti-Semitic, did not like Jews, bought into some belief that the Jews are the root of all evil. Where do you think, again, if those allegations are true, where do you think this young man developed that belief? Where do you think this young man first discovered anti-Jewish statements and was able to cultivate with people that were able to help further indoctrinate? Because we're talking about a 19-year-old kid, Kevin.
Yeah.
From all accounts, because it was his father that turned him in, good parents. So he didn't learn that at home. So where else would he learn it, Kev?
Well, it's like you go back to is social media, the internet, things like that. While the internet can be a good tool, it can also be a very bad one. And I think this is where it goes back to it's studies. Pew Research is very good and very reputable whenever it comes to studies. You have fourth graders that are being offered drugs now. That's when they'll probably have their most interaction with drugs. They'll have be tempted with intercourse by the sixth grade.
Wow.
My kid is seventh grade, so they're very aware that this stuff is happening. And parents, my generation, that was a high school thing. Mm-hmm. And then you're a little bit older than me, so it's probably around high school, college, whenever you dealt with stuff like that. And I think a lot of parents and older parents, they don't understand that this is happening at such a young age whenever you're having drug interaction at fourth grade. Fourth grader is, that's whenever they're starting to get interacted with that stuff.
I only knew what drugs was in the fourth grade because of the New York Mets. And even then I wasn't sure what it was, but we heard all the stories of Doc Gooden and Darryl Strawberry, but it wasn't something we were tempted to go out and find ourselves.
Right. We're talking about middle schoolers here at this point, having to deal with porn addiction, stuff like that. And if you don't think that your child is being indoctrinated with stuff, you need to wake up. And it's coming early and it's coming fast. I go back to my daughter. She can make an account on a Reddit. She can make stuff like that. She knows how to do an email. She was doing Photoshop and Lightroom technology and platforms and whenever she was in elementary school. And I was shocked to learn that they had a Photoshop class at her elementary school. So there's good things that they can be used for stuff like that, but there's also bad things. And we've, as a parent, me and her mother, we've already encountered stuff where she said that, such and such happened, and she's in middle school right now. She's in junior high. So I think that parents have to be very aware. They have to stay diligent. But like you said, we've used iPhones and iPads as a babysitter.
Yep.
And I understand I can fall victim of that too. You get busy with work and you just say, well, it's fine. And then you look up 2 hours later and your child's still looking at an iPhone or iPad. But we have to stop that. Yeah. We have to become parents. We have to become parents. And that involves the hard things like limiting screen access and things. And just to be honest, go outside. Yeah. Just go outside and get off there. Get off of iPhones and iPads and PlayStations and stuff like this, and build a fire and talk. I think that's another thing too, is having communication with your kid. You're not going to be able to keep your child in a bubble, right? Yeah. And this 19-year-old that burned the synagogue, his parents were good parents probably, and they tried to raise him right. There's only so much you can do. Yeah. But we cannot let social media and the outside world raise our kids.
How big of a part do you think that as this nation has moved away from God, as we've become less and less involved in the church, how big of a role do you think that's playing on the decay? Because I think it's a massive role. Because if you're embedded in biblical teaching, you understand this type of violence is wrong. Yeah. You understand these things. It doesn't teach you hate. It teaches you a moral compass.
Yeah, it's absolutely huge. My grandmother just passed a few weeks ago, but one of the things that I can always remember is she had me at Vacation Bible School. That's some of my best memories, is her taking me back whenever we had Vacation Bible School during the day. Yeah. You would get up and you would be wanting that cookie and red Kool-Aid, right? Yeah. But there were so many principles that I learned, and I went from there to go into youth group and learn there, and went on to college education, and then help out at my church with students to this day. And I think that being involved in church is important. I think it's the most important thing that you can do. And there were times whenever I was a student and a youth that I didn't want to go, but I went anyway because I understood that it was important. And it's always about finding a good church and people who are involved in your kid's life. And that's not going to fix them, right? Yeah. It's not a babysitter drop-off point, but it does give you good principles. And that's the thing. And where we're at locally, I know there's a lot of people across the state, across the nation that watch this show. But locally here in Jones County, there are plenty of good churches that you can get involved in and things like that with people who care and want good things for your kids. And I'll be honest, there's a lot of negative news that we have to talk about, but there's a lot of good news too with some of our students around here. We've got, we both are very involved with athletics and stuff like that, and there are a lot of good kids who have good values. So, but there's still kids who don't, and there are parents who just, like I said, throw an iPad in their hand and move on.
And without that moral structure, when you start getting confronted with the evil of the world, you don't know to battle back against it, and that's part of why it's so important. And when you look at things too, I mean, again, social media is definitely a major player in the blame for this rise, but let's not discount the mainstream media too, because they sensationalize everything now. They're not objective at all. They're not coming in and reporting because they report things they have. I think that's another thing that gets downplayed and not talked about enough. The creation of the 24-hour news cycle, where you've got networks like CNN, even Fox News, that are on 24/7. They're looking for content to fill, to get people to watch. So it's going to be sensationalized, because guess what catches your attention more? The sensationalized story. That's the reality that we continue to come across, Kevin, and that's part of the problem. I know we're about 2 minutes from the break, but real quick, don't you kind of see it too, that the media, I mean, how many times can you watch a video of somebody calling Donald Trump a fascist, where if you're impressionable, you haven't studied on your own, you start to believe he's a fascist.
Right, yeah, it's very much the truth. I can't help but think of it's a comedy movie, it's Anchorman 2, where they go in and they're trying to do a 24/7 news channel, and they're just looking for content. So they're showing just absurd stuff or whatever they can find. That's kind of a parody of what we're doing is 2025, 2026 as a nation.
Is it a parody or is it the reality?
I think it's become a reality. Honestly, I would rather watch some of the stuff that they found than what they're showing now in 2026, where it's just constantly someone, like you said, saying that Trump is a fascist and all of these other things. There's everything, and I think Sean Murphy, our one of our guys here, he wrote a column how everything is breaking news now, and I think that's where we devolve into with mainstream media. Everything is breaking news, and it's just crazy. Whatever Trump says right now, it's breaking news.
Absolutely. Well, guys, I think we're up against a break. When we come back, we'll wrap up this particular story and then get into a couple of others. You're watching Chris McDaniel's America here on the Midnight Ride Network, your home for the anti-establishment movement.
Resort.
Welcome back here to Chris McDaniel's America. Again, Jack Fairchild's filling in for Chris today, joined alongside Kevin Lindsay across the table from me. And again, we're talking about this, all these things. And I think I didn't really get into it as much as you did, but it is troubling. It is concerning to see that the numbers are higher in women, because that's shocking. You wouldn't think that women, who normally are more compassionate than men, would have the higher resolve to think that political violence is okay. Rush Limbaugh, you talked about the new feminists. Rush Limbaugh used to have a title for them. They were feminazis. That's what he called them. And that's pretty accurate. I know that's going to make them mad, but I don't care. Yeah, that's my toxic masculinity, I guess, taking over at the moment. But yeah, it's insane what we've seen. And if this country doesn't, this world, not just this country, if we don't have that spiritual awakening and move ourselves back to that biblical base and have a basic understanding, this type of stuff is only going to get worse, because again, these polls weren't that far apart. And you already see that big of a gap where liberals went from 56 to 67, and those that identified as conservative went over 50%. It's frightening. And it goes back to that age-old question, where's the middle ground? Are we going to be able to come together with them? I'm not so sure. But when it comes to other stories, because again, midterm elections coming up, you're going to hear a lot about the midterms. It's the battle for power of the House and the Senate. There's a new poll that was taken by the New York Times and Siena University, where it points that Democrats hold the advantage heading into the midterm elections. The poll found that 48% of registered voters would support Democrat candidates if the midterm elections were held today, compared to just 43% for Republican candidates. The poll also showed skepticism towards President Donald Trump's policies, with 47% of registered voters saying that they strongly disapproved of how he's handling his job as president. The poll surveyed a little under 2,000, I think it's 1,625 registered voters nationwide from January 12th to January 17th. And it advertised a margin of error of 2.8%. A 51% majority of Americans also say that Trump's policies have made their lives less affordable. In total, 49% of registered voters say that the country is worse off now than it was a year ago, compared to 32% who say it's better. Again, this is one of those things that I'm not sure. Kevin, I don't know how familiar you are with polls and how they conduct them. You can have a very unbiased poll, depending on the sample size. But by the same token, if I want the poll to say that Kevin Lindsay's the biggest idiot on the planet, I can go and make sure that I'm targeting the people that are most likely to not believe that Kevin has any intelligence.
I'm sure you can find those people.
They're out there.
I'm sure there are.
Some of them are downstairs at this very moment.
Probably so. You could probably hit up some communities in the back.
But I mean, again, you see these numbers, and of course, people are going to make a big deal out of it. And I do believe that there are folks that feel like things are less affordable now. I'm not sure there are that many that believe that President Trump is doing a poor job. I do question, especially when I see it's New York Times, I question, is this a legitimate poll, or is it one that they skewed? It's amazing working on campaigns. I have seen it time and time again. Oh, the opponent released this poll. And then you go look at where they polled, and you're like, that's why they got that result. They polled their home county. They made sure to make sure they got a positive result. But they do that because they can release it. And when you see polls like this too, it's also done, Kevin, to discourage people from turning out to vote. Because what's the point in you going voting if you know your side's going to lose anyway? How wrong were the polls in the last presidential election? They were all telling us that Kamala Harris was going to win that race.
Right.
She didn't even come close. Do I think that the midterms are going to be close this year? Yes. Do I think there's a strong possibility of Democrats taking back either the Senate or their House? Absolutely, I do. But just because historical precedents says that that's what happened. The party in control of the White House usually loses ground in the midterms. It's just how it always functions. Do I think that this poll is skewed in that a direction to go ahead and give Democrats that positive result? Absolutely, I do. I mean, Kevin, what's your take on this poll?
Yeah, when you said New York Times, I immediately thought that the poll would be skewed. This is a cycle, though, that's happened, like you said. I'm glad you did say that. Usually, whatever party is in the White House, you're going to have the House and Senate flip, things like that. I know the tariffs obviously were a big thing. I look at the tariffs as a long-term plan, and I think that I keep going back to it, but we're in a reactionary world, and people just don't want to see a long-term thing. They want something short-term, and they want it now. And I feel like that's one of those things that Trump gambled on. I'll be very clear that he gambled on the tariff deal. And I think that has been the forefront in media about the tariffs and stuff. And that's probably affected people's opinions, I think, probably the most. That's what I see a lot is people talking about those. Even in my friend circles, that's the big thing that's talked about is tariffs. But 2,000, you said it was 2,000 people? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
A little under. It was 1,625, I think.
Yeah, that to me, that's not a big...
And most polls aren't a big sample. Right. That's in line with a lot of polls. It's hard for me to just say, oh yeah, that's just the feeling across the nation. Have things maybe cooled off a little bit for Trump? Probably. Yeah. Probably have. Yeah. But I don't know. It's hard for me to trust polls knowing what we saw in 2016 with the presidential election, knowing what we saw even in 2020, and then what we saw in 2024 in the presidential election. And especially with New York Times, they're left-leaning. They do have some good news sources. They're part of The Athletic, which I like. But they're very much skewed. Oh, absolutely. And that's the thing, too. I mean, talking about how they can skew a poll. Yes, it says the poll was conducted all over the country. But how many red states and how many blue states? Right. We don't know because they didn't include that. So it could have been a very skewed poll. Do I think that there are people that believe that way? Absolutely, I do. And I understand it. When grocery prices are as high as they are, and they were a year ago under Biden, because Joe Biden's the one where we saw the inflation increase. But the person that's in the office at the time is the one that a lot of times will get the blame. And I think that's where some of the failures of Biden policies that we just haven't seen the correction on yet could potentially wreak its ugly head against Donald Trump and Republicans in the midterms. We'll be keeping a close eye on it. But when you've got other stories like this one that really and truly, to me, could be something that Republicans could latch onto and use against Democrat candidates all over the country, and that's this Minnesota welfare fraud. I know, Kevin, you're pretty familiar with the fact that a lot of Somali nationals were opening daycares across the state that had no children in them, and they were sending the money back to their home country. It is a scam of epic proportions, and it's one that continues to rock Minnesota. It's already led to Tim Walz announcing he would not seek a third term as governor. Everybody thought for sure he was going to run for that third term. This scandal hit. Not happening now. Well, a Minnesota woman who was convicted in one of the state's fraud schemes alleged in a jailhouse interview that Governor Tim Walz and Attorney General Keith Ellison were aware of the widespread fraud well before federal prosecutors stepped in. Amy Bach, the former head of the nonprofit Feeding Our Future, spoke to Fox News from the jail there in Minnesota, claiming state officials continued approving and paying claims even after concerns were raised about the potential fraud. Bach alleged that the state approved program sponsors and was responsible for monitoring claims, but officials repeatedly failed to investigate or stop suspicious companies after she flagged them. She said, I honestly believe that Keith Ellison and Governor Walz need to be held accountable. There needs to be an investigation done. If they weren't aware, that's concerning. And I've said that from the start. Because of the amount of money stolen, Kevin, if they weren't aware, they were incompetent. If they were aware, they're complicit. They're a part of it. And it's one of those things where, yes, I think that we need further investigation into the powers that be there. It's one of those things that has racked my brain for the longest time when it comes to this. But Bach went further because she said, I have to believe that the governor's office and Keith Ellison's office were aware of this. They've said they were involved in helping the FBI. They've said they were made aware, but apparently I'm scary, so they couldn't do anything about it. Talking about her own conviction and her own involvement in this scam. It's a mess, Kevin, for sure. And it's one of those things that I think is a reflection on Tim Walz as governor, because you don't steal $1 billion with a B. You don't get into the billion stratosphere and it not be noticed. Yet somehow they got to that stratosphere. I think it's very believable. They knew what was happening and were turning a blind eye to it before the FBI got involved.
Yes, exactly what we talked about last week, where, like you said just a few minutes ago, where Walz says he's not going to campaign for a third term. More and more is coming out. When you have someone in a jail cell who's coming out and saying that they tried to flag and report stuff, I mean, this woman has nothing to lose at this point.
Yeah.
You know, she's sitting in a jail cell. Walz, you asked last week, would he finish out his term as governor? This coming out is not good. No. Not good at all for him. I think those odds are deteriorating rapidly if he's going to finish out his term. And like you said, how do you just lose over $1 billion?
Yeah. And to implicate the attorney general, the chief prosecutor in the state, that implicate, again, that's just mind blowing, because what's the easiest way to commit a fraud? Well, if you got the chief prosecutor on your side to turn a blind eye, that's not a good thing at all, Kevin. I mean, it's a mess up in Minnesota without a doubt. And the more we hear about it, the worse it's getting.
Yeah, you know, people talk about Mississippi and the leadership here. Look at the blue state in Minnesota right now. It is absolutely deteriorating.
Chaos.
Yeah, I mean, the leadership, is just off the rails here. And, you know, there's a lot of things that we could fix in Mississippi, but I am proud to be where I'm at right now instead of in Minnesota, because it is an absolute crap show there. Yeah. It just boggles my mind that you just lose billions. Just crazy. I
mean, from this scandal to everything going on with ICE up there and the way that they just allow protesters to run roughshod over these federal agents, there is a true breakdown in leadership in that state. And yeah, I think Tim Walz needs to just go ahead and resign, step down, get out of the way. If any of this allegation is true against the attorney general, he needs to go ahead and be removed as well, because it's your job. If you knew about the fraud and you did nothing, whether you're governor or attorney general, you're a part of the problem.
Imagine if Shad White was in Minnesota right now. He would be having a field day.
He would be. He would be. Goodness. More news. We'll get off of the Minnesota stuff, just because we've, again, we talked about it some last week, but it's relevant now that you've got someone convicted in part of the scandal implicating the governor and the attorney general. You have to talk about it again. But, Kevin, I'm sure you're very aware. You probably have it on your DVR and watch it every day. I'm sure you're a big fan of ABC's The View, right?
Oh, yeah, I'm a huge fan.
Since you've already expressed your love for the feminazis, I figure you're a big fan. Joy Behar is probably one of your favorite.
Absolutely. I have a poster. It's next to the Taylor Swift poster that we talk about. You can't mute me like
I can get Savannah to mute you. That can happen. No. Don't think just because I'm not in front of the board, I don't have that power. But yeah, the View is just a group of cackling hens that get up there and usually have some of the dumbest opinions I've ever heard. Most of them, I'm sure there's some that are intelligent, but most of them aren't the most intelligent people. They just have stuck them on television. Nobody has ever accused Whoopi Goldberg of being an intellectual giant. Nobody's ever accused Joy Behar of being an intellectual giant. Can they be entertaining? To that crowd, I'm sure they are, else they wouldn't be on. Not to me. But The View, they're a very, very anti-Trump show. They're a very, very anti-conservative show before Trump even came around. And on Wednesday, co-host Whoopi Goldberg said it was time for President Trump to be removed from the White House over his mental fitness. She wants to say that the 25th Amendment, it's time, it's time, it's time. Her co-host, Sonny Holston, said, to that point, Whoopi, you should be in a lot of company. You believe at this point, the President of the United States may not have his full faculties. Goldberg said, I felt that before now. And then, of course, they were all jumping all over it. Because, again, apparently it was after playing a clip of Trump's speech at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland. That's what led them to say this. And I haven't seen the clip. Have you seen the clip?
I thought Whoopi Goldberg was supposed to be out of the country. Didn't she say during the first term that she was going to leave the country?
I think she was one of the ones who did. Yeah. Yes. I haven't seen the clip yet, so I don't have. But my message to them is to shut up because you didn't say a word about Joe Biden.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. Mm-hmm. You know, we had this whole thing of question, was Joe Biden mentally fit and ready and prepared to go into a debate, and he starts talking about all kind of stuff to the point that Trump is like, I don't even know what this guy said. Mm-hmm. And then you have one of the best meltdowns ever where even your left-leaning mainstream media is like, this guy's not fit. He can't. Yeah. We're concerned about him. And, you know, this was after how many times did conservative people say, we're worried about Joe Biden?
Yeah.
You know, you have him just walking off into the jungle in one interview, you know, trying
to shake hands with imaginary friends.
Right. I mean, just all kind of crazy stuff. And now you've got Whoopi Goldberg saying that she's concerned about Trump's well-being and all this stuff. I told you this off air. Mm-hmm. I have an opinion on this. I told you this off air just a little while ago. You do not want Donald Trump out of the office.
Yeah.
Because you get J.D. Vance, and I love J.D., man.
Yeah, that's not your opinion.
I love J.D. I think J.D. is more calculated than what Donald Trump is. He's a better debater, I feel like. I mean, as far as communicating, like you said, he's a better communicator. Mm-hmm. I should say it that way. I think he's, in some ways, a lot more calculated and aggressive than Donald Trump is. You don't want to go down this road.
Well, the other thing, too, is Trump was just elected. Mm-hmm. This is year one.
Yeah.
What do you think that's going to do to the overwhelming majority of people that voted for Donald Trump? Mm-hmm. That if you try to invoke the 25th, and first off, not going to happen as long as Republicans are in control of the House. It's not going to happen. It's just them talking to hear their own voices because they can't help themselves. They always want to jump on Trump. Again, I haven't seen the speech he gave. I may watch it and be like, wow, that was bad. But if I were to say that, I at least have a lot more credibility than they do, considering the fact I said the same thing about Joe Biden.
Yeah.
They sat there on that show and defended Joe Biden, defended him, said surely he's fully capable. His mind is right. Mm. They had other people come on the show to back up the claim that Joe Biden's mind was right. But they saw a speech from Trump, and now we need to invoke. Shut up. I mean, it's that simple. Just shut up.
Yeah, Whoopi needs to go back to playing in Ghost or something. Maybe they'll have a sequel. I don't know. Yeah, she needs to do something else.
You know, I don't even know if I want her in movies or on TV. I just don't want to have to hear from her, deal with her, or anything anymore.
You ever seen have you seen the Landman scene?
No, I've not seen that show.
Right. You've got to watch it. You got to watch Landman, but you know, they make a reference to The View. It's actually Billy Bob Thornton's character with Sam Elliott, who breaks my heart that he's such a liberal because Sam Elliott
in real life.
Yeah, in real life but you know, they're talking at the outside of their house, and Billy Bob Thornton's character, Tommy, he's telling his dad, Sam Elliott plays his dad, he's telling him, he's like, go inside and turn on the TV and watch The View. And Sam's like, The View? What is that? And he's like, it's just a bunch of women complaining about men and complaining about Donald Trump, just to complain. And it was just a great summary of exactly what that show is.
Pretty much what it is. Yeah. Pretty much the way we described it. Yeah. A group of cackling hens that just get up there and ramble. Yep. Oh, goodness. Now, this is a story, and this is one I'm hoping that we'll have Chris back next week, because this is one I would love to sit down with him and talk about. This House Oversight Committee that is holding hearings on the Epstein files, and they subpoenaed former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton and former President Bill Clinton. Of course, the Clintons refused to go. The Oversight Committee has voted to hold both Bill and Hillary in contempt of Congress after they ignored the subpoenas to show up and testify about convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. In a post on X, the committee explained that the bipartisan resolution to hold the Clintons in contempt of court for dodging their subpoenas had passed and were being sent to the House. The committee voting to hold the Clintons in contempt of court comes after House Oversight Committee Chairman James Comer shared that he rejected a ridiculous offer from the Clintons to take part in an unofficial interview regarding the Epstein investigation. He went on to say that in an X post, facing contempt of Congress, the Clinton lawyers made an untenable offer that I travel to New York for a conversation with President Clinton only. No official transcript would be recorded, and other members of Congress would be barred from participating. I have rejected the Clintons' ridiculous offer. And it is a ridiculous offer, because it just goes on. And he went further, because he said the Clintons' latest demands make it clear they believe their last name entitles them to special treatment. The House Oversight Committee's bipartisan subpoenas require the Clintons to appear for depositions that are under oath and transcribed. So again, this is a big deal. If you remember, during the Biden administration, Trump allies, if they refused to spend, they were arrested.
Yeah.
Why has nobody arrested the Clintons yet?
Have we got Whoopi Goldberg's opinion on that?
Yeah, I'm sure it's going to be glowing in defense of Bill and Hillary. I'm sure we know it without her stating it. It's just, and I think they're 100% right. I think them knowing that their last name is Clinton, the fact that they have held on to prestige in this country for so long, they feel like they can just thumb their nose at Congress, and that's exactly what they're doing here.
Yeah, I believe the same thing. What would happen if the roles were reversed this week is what I would want to know. What would happen if it was Donald Trump who just said, no, I'm just refusing to do that?
Well, ask Steve Bannon, one of Trump's allies, that he faced jail time for refusal.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if it was on the other side of the platform, you would have riots and everything else going on. If Trump just denied it, if he just said, I'm not doing this, there's no excuse. Obviously, there's something to hide. Like you said, probably Chris is probably much more informed I am on the Epstein stuff and the files and things like that. But I think the Epstein files are incriminating for everybody. I think there's a lot of stuff probably on both sides of the aisle that people don't want talked about. But I definitely think the Clintons are involved in it.
Bill definitely was.
Yeah, for sure, right? So I just go back to what would be the uproar if Donald Trump had said that, or J.D. Vance had said, hey, I'm just ignoring this. I'm not going to it. And, we're not going to have an official transcript or anything like that.
Yeah, we've already seen the examples because it happened to Trump allies. It's insane. Now, before we wrap up, and we only got a couple of minutes left, Kevin, I talked about on today's episode of the Right Side Radio Show that I released this morning, I talked about this Minnesota protest in which Don Lemon just happened to show up as they're storming a church. And it's an insane thing because, again, I'm all for your protest. If you want to protest that pastor, stand outside of the church. No complaint. But when you storm in the middle of the service, that's no longer a protest. That's trespassing. That's a disturbance of their right to worship, Kevin. And the fact that Don Lemon just showed up, of course, we've seen videos since of him talking to the protesters before. He didn't just show up. He knew what they were planning, and he wanted to make sure he documented it. And it's crazy that that's what has happened. And, of course, the Department of Justice, they wanted to hold Don Lemon accountable, but a federal judge there in Minnesota refused to sign the complaint against Don Lemon for the church riot. It's unconscionable, Kevin. I know you're a churchgoer. We've seen people come into churches and shoot them up. You coming in as a protest, there's a reason why this is unacceptable and is something that should not be allowed to happen.
Yeah. First of all, let me just say the pastor handled it way better than what I think a lot of people would have. I think, he's talked about the safety of his congregants. I mean, he's exactly right. I told you off there, and I would say it right here, probably not the best part of judgment, but watching the videos, if someone got in my face, I could probably tolerate it. But if someone was to do like they were doing, if they got in my daughter's face or my partner's face, then we would have problems. And I probably would not react the same, unfortunately. Just wild. I'm like you. If you want to protest outside the church. But whenever you start coming in people's places of worship and houses and things like that, no.
Yeah.
It's a big no-go. A couple of people have already been arrested, right, through that?
Yeah, there have been some arrested. Not Don Lemon.
That's what I was going to say. I think as evidence rolls out, I mean, it's going to be hard for him, I think, to avoid it. I don't think he just happened to be there. It's hard for me to fathom that he just happened to be there knowing what we already know.
Yeah, especially since we've seen the video of him kind of orchestrating how it was going to go down. Yeah. So he knew. He didn't show up and say, plus it wasn't happening where the riots were happening. And to watch him sit here and claim with a straight face, because he said these protests are happening because of what happened to the good woman. The protests were happening before Nicole Renee Good was shot.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, she was shot at a protest. So no, they're not happening because of her. They're happening. They were already happening. Now, are some trying to exploit her death? Absolutely they are. Mm-hmm. Are some trying to utilize that to influence further outrage? Absolutely they are. But Don Lemon's claim that this is why people were in the streets. They were in the streets in the first place. That's where she got shot, was at a protest. This again is a false claim. Don Lemon was very much complicit in helping aid them go in. You'll never convince me otherwise. He's not a journalist. He's an activist.
Yep.
And there's a difference. A journalist is going to go in and cover this story with an objective mindset. Don Lemon's going in and covering this story already with his mind made up that ICE is bad. Yeah. He's not trying to be objective. He has no desire in being objective. And that's part of the problem here. And I think they broke the law when they stormed a church in the middle of its service. And it should be prosecuted because, again, they're taking away somebody's right to worship by doing that. It's absurd. They don't even know if the preacher that they were protesting, they don't even know if he's truly an ICE agent or not. They just believe he is. And that's part of the problem. Now, Kevin, again, thank you for coming on last second and being a part of this show again this week. I think you're starting to enjoy doing it. So
it's always fun. Sometimes I stumble over my words, but hey, we're getting there. We'll get it smoothed out.
You do fine, Kevin. Maybe one of these days when I'm out, you can sit in with Chris on one of these shows. I trust you. You won't have to say as much as you did when you're hosting it with me. And that's not a knock on Chris. He's just really, really good in this chair. And we miss him. We hope that we can have him back next week. We're hoping that if Chris's schedule can't do Thursday, that we're past ice storms to where maybe a Sunday show can come back. But because of all those circumstances, everything that was happening, it was better for Kevin and I to just go ahead and record today to make sure we got a show out to our audience. But I'm Jack Fairchilds, and for Kevin Lindsay, this has been Chris McDaniel's America here on the Midnight Ride Network, your home for the anti-establishment movement.
Looks like you've been sleeping well.
Megan, he's back. The MyPillow guy.
And you're looking good.
Still feeling good.
Well, just when you thought it couldn't get any better, we've got the best pillow ever, MyPillow 2.0.
Wow, it's so soft and smooth.
It's cool to the touch. How did you do that?
Well, we took MyPillow's patented fill and combined it with this new technology that we didn't have back then when I invented MyPillow to bring you the best pillow in history, MyPillow 2.0. Just like all of you, I never imagined that MyPillow could get any better. That's why I haven't changed it in nearly 20 years. Then I heard about a revolutionary new technology, and I knew I had to bring it to you all. MyPillow 2.0 is truly the next generation of MyPillow.
The MyPillow 2.0 is cooler and softer than the last MyPillow. It is so comfortable to sleep on at night. I look forward to going to bed, and I wake up well rested in the morning.
Sleep is all about temperature and height. MyPillow 2.0's patented adjustable fill is going to give you the exact individual support you need from your head to your bed. And now here's where it gets even better. We've all experienced those temperature-related sleep interruptions where you get too hot, you toss and turn, you flip your pillow over to the cool side. Well, all that's gone with my brand new MyPillow 2.0 cooling fabric that's made with temperature-regulating thread.
The best sleep just got even better. Whether you have a MyPillow or not, you need to get the brand new MyPillow 2.0. Call or go to MyPillow.com now. Use your promo code, and for a limited time when you buy one, you'll get a second one absolutely free.
You're sleeping even better.
And cooler, too.
And you're looking good.
Feeling good.
I knew you would.
Visit MyPillow.com.